I'm Sarah Olivieri. I am a former executive director, creator of the Impact Method, #1 international best-selling author and founder of PivotGround. And I love helping nonprofits change the way they operate so they can thrive. And today we're talking about how to optimize your time management. So here's what I see for some people. Some of you might know this box. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix. I believe Stephen Covey made it famous, not Eisenhower. But what happens for, especially us in nonprofits, we're told to use this as a way to prioritize. These are your urgent and important things. You're not urgent but important things. You're not important urgent things, and you're not urgent, not important things, which you can just get rid of. But the problem is we end up always being in this box in nonprofit. So if we're calling this quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4, tell me in the chat or in the comments if you're watching the replay, which box do you live in? Are you all 1, all 2, all 3? I doubt you're all 4, or are you a combination of 2 boxes? Yeah, box 1. So that's what I see, ones. People are stuck in ones. Yeah, I want to see box 1, a little bit of box 2, box 1 and 2, awesome. So where we want to get to is 2. So if you're living in box 2, that is awesome. And what I'm going to tell you today is going to help you just get even more done. And if you're living all in box 1 or mostly in box 1 and a little in box 2, I'm going to help you shift more of your work to box 2. So the way we do that is we have to optimize 3 things. And the not so exciting answer is the first thing we really need to optimize is what you are doing. You actually need to change what you're doing. And then we're going to look briefly at how you do your things, because that will help. We want to optimize that. And then finally, we're going to look at optimizing when you do what you do. A lot of time management people focus on the when, and the when can get you time back in your day, but not nearly to the extent that optimizing what you're working on can do. So if you're stuck in quadrant 1, this first step is for you. Awesome. So how do we optimize what we do? Well, the first thing we need to do is really know what our zone of genius, this is one way of saying this, that's the one that resonates with me. It's what are the things that you do that you are both good at, and this is the key, energize you. So for example, when I give webinars like this, they're in my wheelhouse and I leave them more energized than I started. So I'm both good at them and they energize me. So some other tools you can use to get a sense of your zone of genius, the Colby A assessment is a paid assessment, but it's a really great way to understand how you work and the things that you do that you should do right away and focus your energy on. Zone of Genius, I have an example of that in my little quadrant here. Unique Ability by Dan Sullivan, that's another tool you can use. These are all ways of getting a sense of what are those things that you're both great at and really energize you. If my slide, we'll move to the next slide. So I use these 3 buckets, and what I want you to do is break down your to-do list. What are the general things you find yourselves working on into these 3 categories. So the things that you, and probably these are all urgent, important things, or these are quadrant 1 and 2 things, whatever ends up on your plate on a daily basis. I want you to divide them into these 3 buckets. The things that are in your zone of genius. The things that, I call it the I can do it bucket. These are things you can do. You may even be great at them, but they don't energize you, right? So for example, I'm great at bookkeeping, but it doesn't energize me, but it's fine. In fact, it's kind of relaxing to me, so I'll just kind of plod away at it. And three, the third bucket is these things are not your forte. You're either not good at them, or even if you are good at them, if they're incredibly draining to you, then that's in this bucket, the not your forte bucket. So I put just a few examples. These are my own examples here. In my zone of genius, calls with clients, talking to nonprofits and helping them identify solutions to their issues. I could do that all day long and I would feel amazing and energized at the end of the day. Planning and delivering these trainings, that's another thing. Other things that I can do, I'm actually pretty good at scheduling calls and meetings, but it certainly doesn't energize me. And things like following up with people might be simple for some, but for me, it's hugely draining. So this is in my not exactly my forte bucket. So think about your to-dos, make yourself these 3 buckets, put them on 3 sheets of paper or break a paper down into 3 sections and put your to-do list and bucket them this way. Remember, we're optimizing what we're going to do. So now what I want you to do, we're going to go work backwards. We're going to take buckets 3 and 2, the things that are not your forte, and the things that you can do but don't energize you, and we're going to start getting them off your plate, because the real big hack to getting out of that urgent box is actually to do less, because doing so many things actually slows you down, and that's what keeps you stuck in quadrant 1. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you stay in quadrant 1, the more you're gonna stay in quadrant 1. So anything you can do to get into quadrant 2 is going to make a huge impact and actually help you get out of quadrant 1. So we're going to start with the things that are not your forte. Get these off your plate at almost any cost. If you're bad at something, it's probably better that it doesn't get done at all than for you to do it and be bad at it, especially if you are already over capacity in your organization. I'd like to introduce you to my gift to you. It's not just any old trash. This is a fireproof trash can. You can put something in there, and when everybody says, oh, hey, there's a fire over there, you can say, yep, it's under control. I'm just letting it burn itself out. So put those things in there that you can get off your plate. This is the most efficient thing. And you might be saying, Sarah, there's nothing I can take off my plate. It's all so important. I have yet to meet someone who wasn't doing things that they didn't need to be doing. So at the end, I'm gonna have a link if you want to schedule a call with me. If you're really not sure what those things are, you can get on a call with me and I'll help you find a few things that you can actually just take off your plate. The next thing you can do, if you can't just not do it, is to delegate it. Now, if you don't have anybody to delegate to, I've got a trick for you on the next slide. But delegating means getting somebody else to do it for you. Now, ideally, you want to pass these things to somebody. So if you don't love following up with people, and I can't just not follow up with people, I hired an assistant who loves following up with people. And she helps me get that done. I took something that's in my bucket 3 and delegated it to somebody who it's there in their bucket 1, their zone of genius bucket. So get as many things off your plate as possible by trashing them or delegating them. Now let's say now we've got some things left on your plate. So this is how we're going to optimize how we're working, right? So we optimize what we're doing by getting things off our plate that are not in our zone of genius, if at all possible. Whatever's left on our plate should be either in our zone of genius or something that we can do. We're really quite good at it, but it certainly doesn't energize us. And what we're going to do is systematize and automate and simplify and improve those 2 sets of things. So if you don't have anyone to delegate to, this is, where you're going to be living. Now, systematizing doesn't have to be automation, but automation is a great way. You systemize something, then you can often automate it. So I'll give you a couple quick examples. We have a short training here, so I'm not going to go too deep, but an example of systematizing combined with simplifying is I used to spend a fair amount of time having to file my paperwork. I work from home, my team is remote, I get the mail, I'm the only one who can file paperwork, but it's definitely not my zone of genius, and it doesn't really bring that much value. So what I did is I simplified my filing system so that I only had 3 folders to put things into. I had bank accounts, bills and statements, and all other documents. And by simplifying my routine, I cut my filing time down to just a few minutes, something that would have taken maybe an hour before. It now only took a few minutes. So I probably took maybe 20 minutes to say, how can I change the way I file things to save myself a ton of time and still get the basic requirements I need from filing? I came up with this idea, thinking, what can I do that's more simple? And boom, I had a new simplified system. So there's a non-tech example. I'll give you, a technological example would be to use automation. You're going to use something like Zapier or something that will do tasks for you automatically, and that will get things off your plate. One tool that I use, actually in combination with delegation, I use a tool called Cloze, C-L-O-Z-E, which helps me manage my email and following up with people. So it reminds me to follow up with people, and even better for me, it reminds my assistant. But even if I didn't have my assistant, that saves me a ton of time and energy because it's reminding me of those things that I need to follow up with. So any kind of tool you can use to get a computer to do some of that legwork. The trick is, before you automate, make sure you create a simple system that actually works. If you automate a mistake, you're gonna, excuse me, amplify your mistake. And you don't want to do that. And everything that really is in your zone of genius, you should now be feeling like you have a little more time in your day, and you should take a moment to really improve that so you get bigger results for the same energy, or you might even be able to get the same or bigger results for even less energy or time, depending on what the case is for you. So we optimized what we're doing, then we optimized how we're doing it. Now we need to talk about when we work. Now, this is such a hard habit for people to break, but I really need you to stop multitasking, because you are losing hours every single day by multitasking. So here's the alternative, is you need to block your time, chunk it together. And you need to be a little diligent about this because interruptions are knocking at your door. But know that you will lose time if you keep multitasking. 2 of my favorite ways to do that are to theme my weeks. You can generally lump things together. Let's say Monday you provide support to your team. And as a leader, I often like to make sure on Mondays, other people who are working for me and need information from me have what they need so they're ready to run for the week. Tuesdays could be talk with stakeholders. Whatever theme you want, just kind of clump like activities together on specific days of the week. Similar concept, and you can use this instead or in coordination, is you can theme your days. So you could be like, mornings are for meetings, afternoon are for project time. Whatever kind of blocks you need, put them in there, but don't put too many in one day. Give yourself some larger chunks to get done. If email is like knocking at your door, say I check my email in the morning when I first start, and I check it again at 1 o'clock, and that's it. And if people are trying to emergency their way into your email box, you set the pace. If it's a true life or death emergency, I'm sure there's another way they can get in touch with you, or you can create those ways and set the tone that, you know, what really is an emergency, because those regular interruptions that seem kind of urgent, if they're eating away at your day, that's not going to work for anybody. So just to make sure that you're convinced about multitasking, this is a great infographic that HubSpot put together. I have a link down here. This is actually a summary of some of the research that went into this infographic. That document specifically mentions this. 40% of your thinking ability goes into switching from one task to another. So if you would like 40% of your day back, reduce the number of times you switch, which means reducing multitasking. Put less on your plate, complete those things completely, and then move on to your next thing. 40%, by the way, turns out to be 31 weeks lost every year. Imagine what you could do in 31 weeks. In the US economy, that equates to $650 billion is the cost of all those interruptions. It takes 4 times longer to recognize new things when you're multitasking. Multitasking doesn't make everything takes longer. Sorry, it makes everything take longer, and it makes you less good at it. You're more likely to make mistakes. You're going to have an even harder time switching over. So I hope that I have convinced you to stop multitasking. You own the time, and redefine your true definition of urgent. If you are saying, this doesn't apply to me, I don't know, none of these things are going to work, I know that you are a special, wonderful organization. But I also know that I have met so many wonderful, unique organizations, but they all benefit from these things. And so, I'm not sure what happened with my screen, but I'd be happy to talk with you one-on-one and help you figure out some tricks. You can go to pivotground.com/apply.